The shuttlecraft Nenebek is a very sturdy ship. Boothby is one of the wisest men Captain Picard ever knew, and Durgo likes the Dresky. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we're doing a review of Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 4, Episode 9, entitled Final Mission, story by Casey Arnold Ince, or Ince, teleplay by Casey Arnold Ince, and Jerry Taylor, you might have heard of her, directed by
Yep.
Corey Allen. This was November 17th, 1990. Where were you? How you doing today, Cirroc?
Doing great. Wonderful. How about you?
Be honest, watching this episode makes me hot. Like seeing these guys in the
Shh.
in the desert, like I'm not good with the
That's
heat. I
so
turn into
funny.
a baby. But like,
Yeah, I wrote that in my notes too. I wrote down, I am thirsty. Like I was thirsty all of a sudden. As soon as I hear there's no water, it's just like
yeah,
there's a thing that triggers in my head. It's crazy. Even when they shut off the water in the building, that like they say, oh, we're going to shut off the water tomorrow between these hours. There's like
a
a
panic. Yeah,
miniature panic comes into me. Like I gotta take a shower.
yeah.
I
I'm
need water.
thirsty. Yeah, it's
I'm
kind of
thirsty. I
like
gotta. What if I do brush my teeth?
if you've
Yeah.
ever had an MRI and they go, okay, whatever you do, don't swallow, and you're like, you just start swallow. Suddenly, I got to swallow like 50 times. I can't.
Yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, I wrote down in my notes. I am so like thirsty
That's so
watching this
funny.
episode.
But I guess what that means is mission accomplished, right? I mean, production design team, the DP,
Yeah.
the director, the actors, they convinced
Yep.
us that walking through, they turned up what's the not the brightness, but can't think of the exposure. And
Uh.
maybe they turned up the
Yeah.
exposure or something like that, made it look
Yeah.
super
Put a
bright.
filter. Yeah, they could have put a filter on the film and
It worked.
yeah, put some yellow tinges on it, and it really felt like even when they were looking at the mountain and they were like, "Oh, we got to walk over there." I'm like, "Bro, that's doable." They were like, "We'll never make it." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Well, that's not that far. I can."
Yeah. Give it 50 minutes. In 50 minutes, you'll cover 3 miles. Sorry, Picard, 5 kilometers, and you'll be there. It'll be hot. It'll be
Yeah,
uncomfortable,
but
but
you can
wear
make
your
it. It looked
funny
doable.
hat. Yeah, they're wearing that fun.
It
By the
wasn't
way,
like put the binoculars on and you could barely see it in this. It was
right.
seeable.
And we know where that is. That's just like an hour east of LA, right? I mean, we know where they
It's
went.
Vasquez Rocks, right?
Yeah, no, it's like San Bernardino or something. San Dimas High School football rules. That's from the Bill and Ted. So, by the way, everybody, if you like Bill and Ted, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon for notifications. If you're listening in, give us a 5-star rating and a nice review. We'd really appreciate that. Also, visit us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/ the seventh rule and become a patron to support this fine show. Starting with, it's a fine show because Cirroc is here, by the way. So, this is your first time watching this episode. I've seen it a bunch of times. To be honest, it's not one of my favorites. I remember when I was a kid and I would see this episode start, I'd be like, oh, yeah, this one.
Hmm.
I mean, it's not a bad one, but as a kid, I was always like, I like the ones that are a little more exciting that like have the Romulans or the Klingons or intrigue or battles or difficult situations amongst officers. This one's more like Wesley going, "You don't even know Captain Picard. He's smarter than you." Like he's always standing up for Picard. But it ends up actually having a really sweet ending that I didn't remember. So I actually really liked it.
I like this episode. Um, I thought it was well conceived as far as A plot, B plot. You know, both storylines were they had to create a dilemma in which Enterprise could not go over to help instantly. And I thought they did a great job with that B plot to kind of create a sense of urgency there for Riker. I also like to see Riker with his captain chops on. So another thing that I enjoyed out of this episode was, getting to see him.
Did you say
I
his
like
captain's chaps?
no, his chops. I think he's got,
Okay.
I think he's got a nice feel for the captain's role when he gets his opportunity. He steps into that position and fills it well. I like the way he deliberates. I like the way he gives orders. I like the way he takes decisive decisions in moments, right? They were like, oh, well, there's this much time left. And he's like, let's do it right away. It didn't take him long to kind of make decisions in those critical moments when it's like life or death, radiation levels are up, this or that. And he's like, 10 seconds left, 5, 4. He's like, all right, now. It's like he's really, he plays the edge really well, but he also makes decisions quickly. And so I like watching him perform. But I also feel like the B storyline complemented the A storyline well enough because
Yeah.
there is these people here that are in danger. Um, and then they can't just abandon them to go save Picard. That made sense to me. It felt like a logical kind of way things would play out. So the way Jonathan Frakes performs the role as captain, there was a moment there, for example, where he kind of stepped into this close-up shot, and it just made me laugh so much because you mentioned how he acts like a director. You know what I mean? He acts
Riker does,
like a
yes.
director with yes,
He
yes,
acts like he's picturing it as a direct, like he's like, I need to look at
yes,
it this way. Now I need to direct everybody.
yes,
Oh, now I'm reacting to this.
yes.
I think he acts like a
So
director.
the line that he says that to me jumped out and like it showcased Jonathan Frakes' acting style in the way that we're talking about. Is at the end of the teaser, he had the clothesline, and he knows this is the end of the teaser. The close up ends on him, and they're going to go to commercial. So he says, "Tell him we won't be joining the search for a while." And he kind of steps into he steps into the close up, and he does one of those looks and he tucks his shirt down, and he's like, "This is the moment."
Yeah,
I
that's it.
we're caught in a dilemma.
He's like,
And
General
so
Hospital, eat your heart out.
yes, exactly. George Clooney, you wish you could do this on ER. This is what it's about. So I just thought I thought that was a little extra bonus for me. Just seeing the whole, you know, I like to hear the crew talk to each other. So when Riker tells Geordi, I need you to do that. We need a new upper limit. You gotta give me more power, whatever it is. I like to see that banter. And I think we got some of that, plus of course, the main storyline, which we'll get into. But that was one of the pleasant things for me, the B storyline.
That's interesting. That's kind of two Riker featured episodes in a row. Obviously, the previous one, he was, it was a fully a Riker episode. This one is, Wesley and Picard episode, but the B plot was predominantly Riker. So that's maybe he's getting a little
Yeah,
more love lately. He kind of started off getting a lot in the first season, if you'll recall. Q was courting him. He was leading away missions. He was doing things. And then they kind of started giving everybody else, there was a Geordi episode and a Worf episode and a Pulaski, they started doing that. So that's interesting to see him kind of coming back to that. And another Wesley episode, which is very reminiscent of the
yeah.
first season too.
And let me piggyback on what you were saying about the Riker episodes. Another thing that I see kind of as a miniature trend in the last two episodes is the emphasis on Captain Picard's age or age, essentially, his
Mm.
wisdom slash age. And so, the last episode, he was in this, aged 15 years. He had become admiral already. He was negotiating and brokering this peace treaty between the Romulans and whatnot. And so there was a lot of emphasis on his seniority and his age. And I felt like in this episode, the contrast of Wesley's youth and beginning Starfleet versus Picard's kind of having had the life experience of a person who's, captained the ship for years and decades, and is reflecting almost on his life in a way where he was reflecting and having those revelations of what I can pass forward to Wesley as far as my life experience. What advice can I give him, about approaching this, experience of being in Starfleet. So both of those things emphasize the kind of wisdom that it takes to get to a level that Picard has gotten to. I think that's a great writing tool for a captain. I think that's the way you want to portray your captain. And I think in the last 2 episodes, they've done a great job of making Picard look like the very wise, experienced person who has a sense of humility and compassion for other people.
Yeah, he's certainly become the Captain Picard that the Star Trek fans are accustomed to. Because like the first couple seasons, he's super rigid,
he doesn't want kids around. He was annoyed by people in that kind of a way.
He didn't have a ton of personality, but then Patrick Stewart kind of leans himself into it, leans his Shakespeare, leans his appreciation of the finer things, leans in some, other cultural things and some humility. The writers obviously, improve, and the writing improves and the writers adjust. And now you have the Captain Picard that we all know and love, because I remember watching the first season. It is kind of jarring because I'm like, that's not how I remember Captain Picard. I remember him being a lot more well-rounded and a lot less rigid. But that's how it always starts. You gotta work your way into those arcs. And Next Generation is not known for its character arcs like Deep Space Nine is. Deep Space Nine is the best at it. But the character arcs in Next Generation, since it's an episodic thing, right? So they don't have like a serialized character arc, but they more have like an evolution of a character that's partially deliberate and partially just kind of a natural progression of new writers and writers adjusting to the actor. And, that's pretty standard. So they still get a nice evolution. They become really good, well-rounded characters.
Yeah. So, and now they have a backstory that we are all clued into, because we've seen now Riker with his sexcapades and his things that he's done. And we've seen Picard now actually grow in the kind of wisdom that I think he's expressed in as a character. There's a lot of moments there where over the course of this show, more recently in the last season 3 and 4, where I think they're realizing, oh, we need to make him appear this way. We need to make him more compassionate, more understanding, more a somebody who explains to people that don't understand as well as he does, and so instead of just being upset that they don't understand, explaining to them why he has reached this level of conclusion of whatever the decision or idea is. And so, yeah, I think they have matured Picard. I think he himself has matured into the character. I think it's really meshing together well. And then with Wesley, I thought this was probably Wil Wheaton's best performance.
It's a pretty good Wes episode, right?
It was probably his best performance. And there were moments that I didn't like as much as others. But when it got down to like some of the crucial moments, which I thought were best showcasing of his acting, when, for example, it was just him and Picard left in that cave, that's when I really thought Wil Wheaton gave some really good performances, when he's trying to keep him alive, when he's telling him why he does the things he does to make him proud. Those kinds of moments I thought were his best acting performances. They actually gave him something to do, and it reminded me that Wil Wheaton's been in some of the best movies that we've seen growing up as a
Stand by
kid.
Me, man.
Yeah. Stand by Me was such an impactful movie. So it reminded me, oh yeah, this is the kid that can do that. They just don't give him that chance to do it because they don't give him the material. But if they give him the material, he can do heavy hitting, life or death type situation scenarios. And I thought that's what he delivered well in this particular episode.
Right. I mean, his character wasn't terribly well received because they were writing him to be, the kid that saves the day always. And that's great in, children's movie. That's great in cartoons. But when it's like adults, or even me as a kid watching kind of an adult show, it's weird to have a kid saving adults. That's kind of how what Save for, kids movies, but that's certainly no knock on the actor himself. And to what you're
Just the
saying,
material.
well, yeah, to what you're saying, we know he can do amazing things. He's been in amazing movies. When given the proper material, he delivers perfectly. So, I wonder if I don't really know why Wes or Will Wheaton left Next Generation, but I wonder if he was, I mean, I'm sure a lot of it was just like it's so time consuming and he's 18 years old or whatever it is. It's time to go. It's time to move on. But probably some of it was just like, you guys don't give me great stuff. You don't give me great stuff. I don't get a ton of episodes. At first, I got a bunch of episodes and they weren't great. Now I don't get him a lot of episodes. He's getting kind of the Tasha Yar treatment where he's just kind of sitting off to the side and he gives Data a look when something happens, something weird happens. They look at each other. And so maybe he was just like, let's see what else is out there. Maybe he wanted to go to college, but he can definitely deliver when he gets the proper material. And yeah, I agree. This episode shows that.
Yeah, and the big thing about being a child in general is that you're still discovering yourself. So there's a level of vulnerability that you have because you don't know who you are. You're not solidified in your persona. And so when you write a character how they wrote Wesley in the beginning, there is no vulnerability there. There's no like, walk me through and show me and like, there's there could be a lot more room for guidance, but you can't guide somebody if they know all the answers and they're smarter than the professor. Then it's like, well, this guy has all the solutions and he doesn't have a weakness. Essentially, I think that characters are better and they read better, they present better when there are flaws in a character, and we get to see those flaws over the course of time be worked on, and we start to either embrace them and love them, or we see that the character has fixed those flaws. Quark's flaw is, you would say, his greed, right? But then after a while, you start to see that it's not, it's something that he works on over time, and he doesn't value the money as much over at the end as much as he enjoys relationships and friendships, and he starts to see that over time. And all the characters with all their flaws, you see Nog, for example, starting out as this, criminal and who's always mischievous, and you get to see him work on those kinds of things that make him a better person and improve his character. I think that's what makes for good writing in general. It's okay for a character to have a flaw. Let's either love them for it or watch them improve on it over the course of the show.
And one flaw that Picard improved upon was being cool with kids, or maybe he just doesn't think of Wesley as a kid anymore. So he's like, "All right, what? You're 18. All right, you're cool. You're cool. I'll say nice things to you on my deathbed." Uh, but it was actually a really nice moment at the end there. Not all the way at the end, but when Picard is telling Wesley, he says, "I envy you." He starts kind of breaking down. He says, "Oh, I envy you," being at just the beginning of the adventure. And I don't remember that line from before, but now I look at it, I'm like, wow, that's beautiful because Picard's thinking he's going to die. And he's thinking, this is the end of my life. And he's looking at this kid that's about to start college, basically. And he's just like, wow, to be in your shoes right now, to be like, I'm about to set foot on my first days of college at the start of the adventure, the start of all the things that we have gone through starting at 18 years old. And if you think you're on your deathbed and looking at a kid, the last thing you see is a kid that's just about to start that adventure. That's got to be a crazy moment. He's just like, wow, you've got so much good stuff ahead of you and some pretty zany stuff. But I didn't remember that. It was really, really good. I think that was the most powerful moment for me in this one.
Yeah, for me, the most powerful moment was Wesley just, hand spooning the water to
I know. I
Picard
was
and
like,
me
that's
saying,
filthy.
"Wash your hands,
Yeah,
young
that's
man."
yeah, that's I thought the same thing. Put your hands in the fountain, wash them up first. If you're gonna be like hand feet, especially because I first saw that when I saw the fountain, I was like, man, is he gonna like try to pour? That's fucking gross. But then I was like,
Yeah,
oh no, good. He's got this tool chest and he's pour and
yeah,
then but then I expect him to like pour the
yeah.
tool
Me
chest
too.
in it. But no,
Me too.
he's like, I better finger it. Just drop it into your
Finger drop.
yeah,
Not even cupped.
yeah.
Not even a cup version.
He
It
was
was like a
like, you
finger drop.
just suck the moisture off my middle finger. Just like, what is going on, man? He's like, I would rather die, Wesley. Leave me here.
Get your hands out of my mouth, Wesley.
Ugh,
Was kind of,
nasty.
especially having gone through COVID, it looked really germy. I was
Yeah.
thinking, this kid's a genius. He can invent a thing. He can figure out a puzzle, but the guy can't figure out a way to carry water from that receptacle to his, like some spoon action, some device, something. I
Spoon
was like, this
action. Yeah,
is.
dude. And especially they were all sweaty and sandy. He's like going to be chewing on granules of sand. I was actually thinking like if I was Picard, I'd be like, just drag me to the fountain, man. Just drag me to the fountain and put my face under it. It's so gross. Like
Or dump the whole thing of water on me. I mean, something. I don't
filthy.
know. Like, no, that's funny that we're thinking about that. But I really like the way the episode was written. This Captain Durgo character with his water, with that bottle, that flask that
Yeah.
initially I thought was water. I thought, wow, it was just well written episode. He was a great two guest star as well. I think his actor name was Nick Tate, but I'm not sure.
Yes.
But he was also one of those actors where, like, right away from the beginning, I'm like, this looks shady. I don't know
Mm.
about you, but from the beginning, I'm like, really, we're getting on that shuttlecraft. That's all I could think of. Jordy said something like, what did he say? He said, "Yeah, I see you. The maneuvering thrusters were rigged in some kind of weird configuration or something." He's like, "Yeah, yeah, I do that." And I'm thinking, no, no, no. That's like, as soon as Jordy highlighted that, I would have been like, "Captain, you can't go on this. This is not fit for flight." This,
We have shuttlecraft. We don't need to
I
borrow this
thought
piece
it,
of junk. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And that was my other thing. It's like, yo, how cheap is Starfleet? Not,
Yeah,
bumming a
really.
ride from some pirate dude.
Yeah, that guy's a waste. But I will say, we're about to get to our break, but this actor that you touched upon, he has done 2 episodes of Star Trek. And there are some people out there right now that are yelling out the other character he has played. Here's a hint. Um, Cirroc and I have already covered his other episode, but this is his first episode in Star Trek, this one right here. So that's the hint. If you and I have already covered his other episode, but this one right here is his first episode. All right, everybody, take our break. We'll be right back.
The riddle of Sphinx.
I know on the seventh rule, man. Hey, everybody, welcome
Uh,
back. Welcome back to the seventh rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
That's where we are. Okay, the trivioids. We've got to compose ourselves. Here we go. Trivioids of the week go a little something like this. Captain Picard has been asked to mediate a dispute among the Selenite miners. Durgo is the captain of a mining shuttle. Wesley Crusher has been accepted into Starfleet Academy. Captain Picard has to what? Oh, Captain Picard has to study up on Rigelian law or Rigelian law. The shuttlecraft Nenebek is a very sturdy ship. Durgo likes the Dresky. Picard has a broken leg, fractured arm, and he took a blow to the head. Isn't a break and a fracture the same thing? I think it is. In the past 3 years, Wesley Crusher has lived more than most people do in a lifetime. Picard forgot
Yeah.
there's no water. Boothby is one of the wisest men Picard ever knew. Okay, so there's a Bilby and a Boothby.
Okay.
Bilby, do you remember in the later seasons of Deep Space Nine when Chief Miles O'Brien becomes like a spy or an agent for some like gangster thing on the Orion Syndicate, and he
Hmm.
ended up getting that guy Bilby's cat, and it was like that movie you said, and Bilby trusted him, but then he had to betray Bilby and all that. That's Bilby. There he is.
That's Bilby.
And that
Hmm.
was Faith Howell that mentioned that in our last recording. I think it was when we were not recording. She's like, "Is the guy in the next episode Bilby?" I swear it is. And as soon as I saw him, I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's definitely Bilby." So it was 8 years later though, because this episode was 1990, and the episode with Bilby was 1998. So 8 years later, he plays the mob boss who trusts O'Brien, lets him get close. What was that, like Carlito's Way or something like that? And then I don't remember.
Donnie Brasco, I think it
Donnie
was.
Brasco, that's the one, yeah. And he
Yeah.
lets him get close. Then Miles O'Brien turns him in, of course, and he ends up getting his cat Chester. And that's the story of
Wow.
Bilby.
Yeah. Well, he did a great job in this episode too. I thought he was, so there were moments again that just the way they write Picard. If you pay attention to the small details, they write him in a way that makes him have integrity and honor. The moment where he says to Bilby, I know Bilby,
Ha,
Durgo,
there we go.
when he tells Captain Durgo, and he says Captain, and he kind of reaches his hand out, and it comes into frame too because they made his hand come up higher than it normally would for a handshake because they wanted it to be in frame.
Yeah.
But when he does that and he kind of puts his hand up like this, it it was a gesture of respect, right? It was like, okay, I'm going to acknowledge that you are a captain, even though you're like the Uber driver of space, essentially, right?
Cab
That's basically
driver.
what I felt like. It
Yeah.
felt like like they were catching a cab almost, right? And he was like, "This is my little ship," and that's what it felt like. But the way Picard extended the honor to him and said "Captain" and shook his hand and looked him in the eye, I thought that was a moment of that's what somebody who has integrity does. They look you in the eye, they shake your hand, they acknowledge you, they give you the respect as a captain. Now this is coming from the real captain to a guy who's like a freighter captain or whatever it was. So that level of respect, that handshake, shows me a lot of character for Picard. Just that gesture,
Hmm.
and he does it again later on. Another moment where I felt Picard also did a small gesture, but it was a level of respect as well. I'll look at my notes.
Yeah, you know what I really liked, and that maybe this is the moment you're talking about, but like this is the true measure of a captain and an ambassador and a diplomat. Like it's real leadership when I'm just going to call him Bilby, when Durgo is like, "Hey, why who says, we're going to the mountains over there that look more like hills? Why should we do that?" And Wesley gives him a little lip like Captain Picard said, "You better recognize, And Picard is like realizing, look, we're on a mission here where like we need this guy to work with us, not against us. I cannot order him to do something, just like he can't order us to do something, but we need to work with him. So Picard very wisely and respectfully says, you're an excellent, ship's pilot. I value your opinion. Is there an option that we're overlooking? And he just opens the door. He doesn't say, this is the best way. This is what I've decided. He just says, please, let's talk about it. Is there a better option? And the guy thinks for a second and he says, no. And then at that point, Picard doesn't have to say, we're doing this thing or I order you. The guy has answered his own question, which is, okay, this is our only option. So let's do it. That's beautiful. That's excellent writing. That's Captain Picard through and through. Just hear him out, let him come to the conclusion, say, okay, great. Well, nobody needs to boss anybody around. this is just what we're going to be doing unless something else comes up. So that was great.
Great writing. Again, that's how you write for a captain. That's how you show true leadership. You don't have to argue or belittle somebody. You can do it in a respectful way using a well-reasoned argument. And I
Mhm.
think that's what Picard has been showing more and more of lately. I want to say another moment where they give backstory to Picard that makes him look and like a person who has a good understanding of the world and a great understanding of people. At the end, towards the end there, where he's telling Wesley, I want you to go when you go to the academy to visit this guy,
Mhm.
Boothby, I think his name
Yeah.
is. And Wesley says, what class does he teach? What does he teach? And he says he's the groundskeeper. And that to me shows somebody who takes the time out to talk with the groundskeeper again with respect, showing that the humility to say, well, I can learn from this guy who's the groundskeeper at this university at Starfleet Academy, and you can learn just as much from a groundskeeper as you can
Totally.
from a professor. And that to me is another sign of wisdom on Picard's part. That
Yeah.
he said he's one of the wisest men I've met, and he's talking about the groundskeeper at Starfleet Academy. Another, it's a small reference, but it's a well written line that talks about the kind of intelligence, maturity, and how Picard approaches his life.
Yeah, and it goes a long way in the point you're making about respect. You got to respect everybody, not just the dean of the college, but the groundskeeper as well, not just the manager of the restaurant, but the busser as well. And the fact that he respects somebody enough to listen to what they have to say and be shown that it's one of the wisest people. Obviously it doesn't make him a superhero, but it tells you a lot about who he is because a lot of people out there would just be like, "Oh, I'm going to dismiss the groundskeeper." Um, Here's the question though. Will we ever get to, I almost said Will Wheaton. Will we ever get to meet Boothby?
Well, Booth be told.
Whoa. This is very good. I like that one. That's an A plus, right? I like that one very much.
Yeah, I don't know, but I also want to say in the same vein, I really like the way Picard was pouring confidence into Wesley.
Wesley.
He, yeah, he was giving him sound advice about just a life approach, and I thought, for example, he says to him, I'm no good. I have a broken leg. I have a broken arm, and I'm no good to you. He says, but so you're going to need to stand up to Durgo on your own. And he kind of gives him that little vote of confidence, like, look, it don't, listen to your own gut instincts and tell him, how you feel about things. Don't let him run over you or, you know, um, his personality overpower you, or stand up to him and don't be afraid. I thought that was kind of good advice for Picard to impart on Wesley.
Yeah, he told him to listen to your heart, like Roxette taught us to do. Everybody knows. So, yeah, I mean, and I did think the acting was good from this Nick Tate, I think his name is.
Yeah, yeah.
So he was good. We also saw a Wesley Crusher replacement. What was her name? Ensign Allenby. She was
Yeah, is that the
in
blonde
West,
woman that was at the helm?
right. She was at Wes's station, yeah, at the helm. Let me see. And
Her name is Ensign Hallaby. Did they mention her name?
Allenby, yeah, he said Ensign
Allenby.
Allenby. And looking at it, they
Okay.
gave her the name Ensign Tess Allenby, but I don't know if they certainly didn't say her first name was Tess, but he did say Allenby. But
Okay.
that's very interesting. Here's something fun. So I'm looking her up right now, and she has 3 episodes. Her next episode is actually the next episode of this series. So that's really cool. So she's probably thinking, that's it. I'm in. I'm the next Wesley Crusher.
Yeah.
Mom, I got the next week. I think they're going to keep bringing me. You know how these things go. If you could be the next
Yeah.
Frasier on Cheers, where they just really like you and keep bringing you back. And then she had no episodes for 2 seasons, and then she had
Yeah.
one uncredited episode in season 6. So that's really interesting that she got two in a row and then never
Mhm.
again. I wonder why. There's too many people that get like one or two episodes, and then you start to think that like they're gonna be part of it, and then they just fall off. Wonder why.
Yeah. Dr. Solar was one of that, right?
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah. You never know how it's going to go. And it always interests me to know how they do make those decisions. Like, what is it about it? Was this person not like popping out on the screen they wanted, or were they too much popping out and it was overpowering some of the other stars? I mean, I don't know, but I'm sure there's a decision making process in that we're not privy to.
Too much popping out. That was, but that's if you're doing background or whatever, because it seems like she did in the 6th season, and maybe she did in a few other things, then you don't want to pop out too much. But yeah, I mean, if they're giving you lines and they're giving you a role and you're in the foreground of the shot, go ahead and pop. But yeah, not too much because they're like, hey, easy, easy. But yeah, I think that she did fine. I didn't, yeah, I would just be curious to know like kind of what happened. Like her career ended basically 2 years later. So maybe she was just not really interested. Maybe there were long hours, or maybe she moved, or who knows. But it would be interesting to
Yeah.
know. I'd love to hear these stories as to like why, she came for 2 weeks straight and then basically never again until she did like a background scene 2 years later in the Next Generation.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, I like the way Wesley delivered the line where he says, how many people get to serve with Jean-Luc Picard? I thought it felt like a great line. It felt like one of those TV magical moments where that's the clip you would use, when you're summing up Picard's life. And, one of the flashbacks would be that line right there. Because it did pop out to me as a well delivered line and a well written line. It's like he's a big deal, and
Yeah.
this was just midway through, the series. Right, we're only on season 4. There's still another 3.5 seasons to go, plus the movies and all of these things. So he's saying this early on in the legend of Picard, essentially, because Picard legend grows even farther and bigger than this, right? Especially when you consider the last 3 seasons of Picard as well, the
Yep.
respan.
Hmm.
So he's talking about his legend even now at this point, which I thought was just something that rings more true as time goes on. How many people do get to serve with Jean-Luc Picard and get the experience that Wesley did get, even though he's leaving at this point. It felt like he solidified his place amongst, the Enterprise crew. Like his legacy was impactful and it's memorable.
Yeah, and you mentioned that we're in the midway point almost of Next Generation. I did look this up a little while back to know exactly where the midway point would be. Now, since season 1 only had like whatever it was, 19
22,
episodes, and this
20. Yeah.
season 2 had like 22 episodes, something like that. There were, yeah. Um, so the midway point, I would have guessed would be around episode 13 of this season. Yeah, no, I think it
Yeah.
was 25 episodes and then 22 in season 2 because of the writer strike. And then the next one had maybe 24, 25. So the point is, the midway point in theory is episode 15 of this season. So we are
Okay.
just 6 episodes away from
Yeah.
halfway done with this series, which just
Yeah.
feels crazy to me. It still feels like we're in the fledgling part of it, but this is it. We're in the meat. A lot of people say season 4 is the best season, surprisingly. I'm not sure why. I guess
The
maybe
best
we'll
so
see.
far.
Yeah, it's the best so far. Yeah.
The best so far.
Mhm.
Yeah, it actually started with the end of season three with that best of both worlds kind of finale.
Man.
So yeah, it's just when it starts to really get meaty, and I like these episodes. To me, this was one of the great episodes of the show.
It's
Um,
good.
yeah,
So,
it was a great episode.
but speaking of which, and speaking of Oral, Cirroc and I were talking about Oral Hershiser, the baseball player. He's a pitcher for the Dodgers
Yeah,
back in the day, right?
yeah.
Um, it's time for something Oral hated, which is the home run of the day. Who gets
Yeah.
the home run of today's episode, Cirroc?
Yeah, you know what?
As a Giants fan, I hated Oral Hershiser. Like, I grew up not liking him at all because he was really, really good. And I did not like Kirk Gibson. Anyway, I was not a Dodgers fan, still not. But please continue.
um, you know, I have two home runs. I'm going to give it to Wesley Crusher, to Will Wheaton. I thought did a great performance. Like I said, his best so far, in my opinion. He really handled the real dramatic stuff very well. Um, and the affection that he has for Picard, I thought was well expressed, especially when he was like, "You don't know Captain Picard. You should never question what he says." And I thought that was funny. So I liked his performance. So I'm going to give him the home run, but then I'm going to give him a very close honorary second home run to the director of this one, Corey Allen.
Mhm.
I thought Corey did a fantastic job, both with the outdoor shots when they were in that desert landscape to a lot of the cave shots. I know he was working with that same cave, but he was able to film
Yeah.
it in a way that felt, like we hadn't seen it in some way, just make it feel new again. And also the balancing act he did from the bridge to the cave to the outdoor stuff and to the little shuttle runabout that they were using as well. So I think all around, that's who I'm going to give it to.
Yeah, I totally
Corey
agree with
Allen
that.
and
I
Will
agree with
Wheaton.
that.
Yeah.
Both of them. The director really stood out to me pretty quickly. And I was like, okay, definitely he gets the home run of the day. But then for Wesley, I feel like he gets it for me on the aggregate. Like we've seen him for a long time. He's given it his all. We've had some fun episodes, like where he befriends some Benzites, in two episodes with Benzites. He's had fights with his mom, he's had a lot of moments.
Mm-hmm.
So home run of the first four seasons to Will Wheaton.
Did a great job in this episode. But like again, Corey Allen really knocked this out the park. They gave him a lot of stuff. He had a lot of material, I feel, because to have to do on location stuff, which they don't do too much on location stuff on this show, but this looks like it was an on location shoot for some of this. Uh, the combination of all of that, I give a lot of credit to Corey Allen for knocking this one out the park as well.
Definitely. It makes me think of Lily Allen, the singer, and her brother's name. Can't remember her brother's name, but he plays Reek in Game of Thrones.
Okay.
All right. So it's time to give a special thanks to Homer Frizzell, Dr. Anne-Marie Segal, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackmon-Tom, TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, Titus Mohler, Dr. Mohamed Noor, Tierney C. Dieckmann, Anil O, Polat, Joe Balsarotti, Mike Goo, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, my live from Tokyo, the Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Jake Barrett. Sounds like a baseball player too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Henry Unger.
Jake.
Yeah. Allyson Leach-Heid, Julie
Time.
Manosfi, Jed Thompson, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, Glenn Iverson, Dave Gregory, Tim Baum, Chris Sternett, Dylan Powell, Peter Draymore, and of course, Jason Okun and Greg K. Wickstrom. Thank you all very much for hanging out with us. Go visit our Patreon. That's patreon.com/the seventh rule and support this wonderful show so that we can keep going forever Cirroc's like, get a hold of yourself, man. All right. We've got the free for all up next. We'll be right back on the seventh rule. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the seventh rule with Cirroc Lofton. This is the free for all with Melissa Longo.
Yeah.
Jason M. Okun. Anil O. Polat is like probably in Athens or something right now. I guess we'll find out later. Allyson Leach-Heid is probably somewhere in New Mexico. And Faith Howell is on the bridge of the Enterprise D. It's always great to see her. So is TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri. Faith Howell as well. Whoa, she's on a fire planet. And actually, that's New Mexico too. Oh, sorry. What did I say?
Faith.
Sorry. Yeah, that looks like a fire planet. Carrie Schwent, aka Crafty Bear, and of course the Dark Lord, Chris McGee, is here. All right, Jake Sisko guesses that their IMDb score.
I got this at like an 8.5 actually.
Anybody else have any guesses that doesn't already know?
For IMDb, I'd say, and again, this doesn't reflect my personal view, but judging by what it is, I'd say about 7.6.
I was going to say 7.3.
Anil, standing pat?
I feel like it's going to be like 6.7 or 6.9, somewhere lower.
Rude.
Whoa.
Man, Anil. Anyway, the correct answer is 6.7, Anil.
No way.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've been totally off the last few weeks. 6.7.
Yeah. Okay. What is that? Paul Pierce? I think that's Paul Pierce, 6.7. So what else we got? Do we have any non-appearance mentions? There's one big one. Boothby. Any others? I didn't get it. What about some kinds of or some sorts of? This seems like some sort of kind of episode.
It does, doesn't it? However, I only caught one. When Wesley is describing that force field that's surrounding the water, he says, "It seems to be some kind of tightly confined annular force field, sir."
I giggled when he said that too, actually. All right. I did. Melissa Longo, can you please forget everything we just said and get us started off on the right track, please? What'd you think of this one?
Actually, this one was kind of a mixed bag for me. So it's not surprising that it's not an 8.5, in my opinion. Mainly because in the beginning of the episode, I wanted to punch Wesley in the face for being a stuck-up snob. He's introduced to this shuttle captain. He's like, there's a shuttlecraft captain, whatever that thing is, his ship. He's like, there's a shuttlecraft, there's a captain for shuttlecraft. I'm like, excuse me, Mr. Bougie Country Club Federation dude. You better step off because it's not fair to judge this guy you've just met. I mean, you know, yeah. And then his behavior didn't improve much until midway through. Towards that guy, and then we find out he's an alcoholic, which I don't know. We could have done without that too. But I will say that I did like the interactions between Picard and Wesley in this episode very much. I'm finding more and more that I'm becoming more and more of a Picard fan, and just because he's not one note and he's very complex and I like it when he opens up and becomes vulnerable and lets his guard down and yeah, and I think Patrick Stewart is a fantastic actor. I think he's really wonderful. So yeah, Picard saved this episode for me for many reasons. So
All right. Melissa Longo, #1 Picard fan. Thank you very much for that. Jason M. Okun, he's like number 40 Picard fan, kind of. What do you think of this one?
Number 47.
Very good.
Oh,
That's what it is. It is an interesting episode, at least for me. I did enjoy it more this time, maybe than I have in the past, and I think some of the reasons for the lower score may have to do with the fact that this is a Wesley episode, and he was certainly never a favorite character of many people, even though it certainly has more to do with the writing, much more to do with the writing than Will Wheaton's performance, because I think he's wonderful in this. I mean, some of the dialogue he was given, Melissa, you alluded to that. There's a little more there that wasn't great, but he handled it wonderfully. So for me, certainly it's a performance type episode. You certainly have, Will Wheaton's performance. You have Patrick Stewart's very sort of, very nuanced performance. And if you listen to it, especially if you get a pair of headphones and just really carefully listen to it, it really is sort of, the voice acting, everything is tremendous. The other part for me is, Corey Allen's direction and sort of and the photography in the episode is terrific. I think they've utilized what they could in terms of location shooting. You get the shots of sort of low angle shots right into the sun, so you kind of understand that this is a scorching planet. So I think it was very well done. I mean, the cave set is what it is. We see the same thing over and over again. It's just there's one little piece of that set that appears again and again and again and again.
Mm-hmm.
But that's that's just a nitpick. I enjoyed it. The music was terrific as well. I mean, Ron Jones's score is what it is. I mean, you notice it immediately. It stands out. It's not kind of wallpaper. So for me, it's certainly visually and acting wise, terrific. He was just it was a character piece, and it was they tried to send off Wesley better than they have other characters, and to a degree, I think it worked. Again, to me, it's just Corey Allen's job and and the acting job of everybody involved. Terrific. There's a lot more to say. There's actually one, I guess not mentioned on it. Basically, there's a character that's mentioned in the script that's not in the finished episode, and I'll talk about that later.
Very nice. Thank you very much, Jason M. Okun, freshly back from Switzerland. Can you believe it? He's got cheese, watches, and knives for everybody. Anil O. Polat is here. I bet he's been to Switzerland 4 times. How are you today?
Good.
Would you probably
I've been to Switzerland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think of this one?
Again, I like Melissa said, I think it's a mixed bag for me because I really like the Wesley character. I just think kind of he's written as snooty sometimes, and I don't feel like that is really the character, or maybe even Will Wheaton's kind of sort of natural. It doesn't come through. So when he's kind of like when they're on the planet and he talks for Picard, I feel like that's sort of out of place. Like if he has so much respect for Picard, he would be naturally more quiet and sort of defer, I feel like. And I would have liked to see, if this is the send-off for Wesley, him interacting with more of the crew, maybe, especially with his mom, but just sort of seeing how important or how integral of the crew he has been, maybe things that we haven't seen on screen, but maybe create a storyline around that. But I see why they chose to go in this direction. I think the Crusher, Picard relationship is really good. And I think those scenes were really, really well acted. So yeah, it sort of falls into like the bad stuff they do with Wesley, but also some of the good stuff because I think the acting is really good.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Anil O. Polat. Allyson Leach-Heid is here. What's up, Allyson? She's got a Sisko Kid shirt on. What'd you think of this one?
I've always liked the episode because it's a great coming of age story for Wesley because he does start out a little snooty in the beginning, and then he has to actually save the day on his own without the help of his crew/family. So that was nice to see because it kind of gives us this idea that he's going to do well in the academy. He doesn't need to have them with him to make him shine. So I like that bit because it does show growth, but it's true. Wesley isn't usually very snooty. So was he having a day? I don't know. So that was weird, but the thing that always gets me is why isn't Beverly on the bridge when Picard says, "Congrats, you're going to the academy." I'm like, there are 2 seats. Beverly could have been sitting there and he wouldn't have asked why his mom was there. She's the head of medical. Like, she can be on the bridge whenever she wants. So that makes me annoyed still. And that she didn't go say like goodbye to him on his mission. I'm like, she probably, unless there's some medical emergency, would have wanted to do that. So that's my nitpick with her and Wesley, like the entire series, that they should have had more time in the little like joys, I guess, that they show. So those are my big things. I think Patrick is a fabulous actor, and just watching him, be in pain and like quiet in his body and letting Will shine. I'm like, he's fabulous. I'm like, he actually can pull off unconscious without us going like, "Hey, are you actually breathing too much?" Like, we're not looking at, we're like, no, we take this situation and I'm like, no, he's doing a great job. So, I do like it. I think the garbage scow radiation sideline story, I tend to just ignore it. I don't pay much attention to it. So, I think they could have had more goodbye to Wesley and then do the big thing, maybe. I don't know. So my favorite line is Wes's, "You don't look so ship-shaped yourself, sir," because the gentle ribbing that was going on between them the whole episode was quite lovely.
Yes, good ribbing. Thank you very much for that, Allyson Leach-Heid. Faith Howell is here. What did you think of this episode, Faith? Are you sad to see Wesley go?
How to answer that without So I'll just settle for saying that I also have always liked this episode. I know this is an unpopular opinion, but I love Wesley. I know that he has moments where he gets away with a bit too much. However, I think in this case, it was well written and he earned the win in this case. And it was nice to see that. I also really like that they built on the Picard Wesley. Of course, everybody comes in right now. The Picard Wesley dynamic in this episode, and we get is this the first mention, I think, of Boothby? Who, I mean, who doesn't love Boothby? Cirroc, you're in for a treat. Yeah, I'll pass it off there.
Oh, you're muted.
There's a lot of pressure on Boothby now because I talked about Boothby a little bit to Cirroc too. So he's like, this Boothby guy better be good. Thank you very much, Faith Howell. What do you think, TJ, Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, of this episode?
It's interesting to me because it's one that I didn't see much when I was a kid, when I was watching other episodes. I don't know if maybe they didn't rerun it as much as some of the others maybe. But I did, of course, eventually catch up and see it. So my memories don't run as far back on this one as I think they should. But as an episode, I like it. When I watched it this time, though, some different things stood out to me as is usual these days. And the one thing that really leaped out for me immediately, and, this kind of touches on Wesley's attitude too, is this kind of have and have not that they seem to be, trying to highlight in the first half of this episode where, the Durgo, when they're, flying in the ship, I think Wesley makes a comment and he says, look, we don't have the Federation's resources out here. We're, just kind of scraping by with what we got and doing the best that we can. And I think that's probably the vibe that Wesley picked up on and why he made those comments, even though he probably should have kept that to himself. And, it kind of goes to the way that Durgo behaves, up into his, final demise, because he's not willing to quit. He's not willing to give up, but he's also not willing to wait. And he feels like probably that's the attitude he's had to have to make it out on the frontier away from all of those resources. But the contrast to that I really appreciated was the way that Wes really approached the situation scientifically, as he always does, to try to actually solve the issue and get as much information as he can before he, decides a course of action to take. And that's what we see Wesley do. And so I enjoyed that. I also very much enjoyed, the interactions between Wesley and Captain Picard. And I think it really was a good spotlight moment for Will Wheaton. I believed it. I felt the feelings, of that conversation of, finally just being able to say these things. And, even Picard says there's so much that I wanted to say to you too. And we just never really had the conversation. So, I felt that moment of deepening connection between them and appreciated it. Aside from that, a couple of things that jumped out to me as well was we got to see Lieutenant J, working next to LaForge at one of the
I missed
stations
her.
in the back of the bridge. Yeah.
So did I.
She was
And
with
also,
she was with Geordi in the engineering or in the back of the bridge.
no, they were on the bridge. They were on the bridge. She was at one of the rear stations.
Nice.
And I also enjoy watching Commander Crusher commanding her medical staff from the bridge and directing things like, and she didn't wait or ask for permission. It's just like, hey, I'm giving the orders here. Like, you're Commander Riker, I'm Commander Crusher, and we're both running this show because this is a medical situation. I'm on the bridge and I'm in charge. So I really, really appreciated that because we don't see it that much. And especially, in that time frame, we didn't see it that much. And so I really, really enjoy watching that. I got a few nitpicks too, but I'll save those for later.
Ooh. All right. Thanks very much. TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri. Carrie Schwent, aka Crafty Bear in the Fire Planet. Mustafar. What did you think of this episode?
It's actually a cave that was lit kind of interestingly that we visited.
Cool.
But I love Wesley Crusher. I love this episode. I'll get to him in a moment. I've got a couple things before that. Durgo, Nick Tate. Most people here know him from the episode of Deep Space Nine that he did. But when I looked up his IMDb to see anything else that I recognized him from, one picture immediately made me remember he is in an adorable episode of season 6 of Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. Plays a guy with like a mental condition. So he is under the impression that he is a bird. He sits in a nest, pecks at his food. Absolutely adorable. So I enjoy him very much from that, although he is very fantastic in the DS9 episode. Couple of fun facts I found that I thought was neat. The episode was supposed to be on originally an ice planet, but that was going to be too expensive and just not look very great, so they went with desert instead. Much better idea. I thought it worked a lot better. The phasers that Durgo hands out to everybody are props from Star Trek 3, Search for Spock. And likely the shuttlecraft too, because he says that it's like 100 years old, so that timeline would fit. A couple of things I noticed that amused me in the overhead shot when you see the arrow, and they're walking away from it. They don't walk in the same straight line as the arrow. They walk just a little bit to the right.
Yes.
And with the wind, it would have wiped out their footprints, presumably. So it probably took them a little bit longer for them to be found because they didn't walk in the exact direction that the arrow was pointing. And the desert floor, anytime you saw it, you could see tire tracks from cars that had been there previously. Stuff like that just amuses me. And I don't mind the B story as much because the whole radioactive garbage scout reminds me of the Malon from Star Trek Voyager, and that's how they get rid of their toxic waste, is they put it on these ships and send it out for these guys to end up dumping somewhere. I've got a little bit of a defense of Beverly, but I'll save that until things left unsaid. But circling back to Will, I love it. I think it's a great send off for him. The scenes between the two, him and Picard, are just so great. They tug at the heartstrings. The snippy bits I can defend, because you remember he's still kind of a teenager. They say, snarky, stupid stuff from time to time, and when they're down on the planet, and he snaps like that, I get pretty grouchy when I'm really flipping hot too. And if you're in an environment that's 130 degrees, you're gonna get a little cranky too. But to finish off, I will recite my limerick I've created for the episode, and no shock, it's from Wesley's point of view. All I have done has been to impress him. It means a lot to know that I did. I'm now off to space school. I sure hope that it's cool. I'm glad we got to go on one last trip.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Carrie, aka Crafty Bear. The Dark Lord Chris McGee is here. He's ready to tell us things. What do you think of this one?
Well, of course, I enjoyed it. Now, this is the episode that, of course, many fans have been waiting for, Will Wheaton's departure from the show as a regular cast member. Now, just to be clear, I didn't dislike Wesley nearly as much as so many others apparently did, but I do agree with Jason that he could have been written better. Some things that I appreciate about this episode, well, as Jason mentioned, we get yet another memorable score by Ron Jones, especially during those walking scenes. Wesley recalling his shuttle trip with Picard is a nice little callback to Samaritan Snare. And of course, we first hear about Boothby. This is also the episode where I learned quite a bit about survival. For example, use a steady pace, not a brisk one when walking long distances in extreme heat. Breathing through your nose helps to delay dehydration. And most importantly, I didn't know this at all until I saw this episode, drinking alcohol only worsens your thirst. I would also really like to know the story behind that Guardian of the Water. What is it? Why is it there? How long has it been there? Did someone put it there, etc.? I'm just curious to know. I do have a few other little nitpicks that I'll bring up in things left unsaid. So I'll end with my memorable quote, which Allyson took my first choice, so I'll go with my backup, which is actually the line that prompted Allyson's choice, which is, "What are you doing in such a filthy uniform?"
Yep, that one. Thanks very much, Chris McGee. Great stuff. All right, Jake's final take. Cirroc, any final thoughts on this episode? We didn't talk
Chris
about
reminded
that.
me.
We didn't talk about that arrow, because I noticed that was really that arrow was like this, and they just started walking, and they were kind of curving too. I'm like, they're never gonna find it. You guys follow your arrow. Sorry.
It's like being at the beach. You're in the water and you think you're in the right spot, but then you look out and oh no, my spot's all the way over there.
Get that arrow right. I wanted to just highlight the makeup job on that one Chairman Sanji alien. I thought it was pretty remarkable. It stood out to me. I'm like, wow, this is a hell of a unique looking alien where the mouth was kind of covered by this dangling thing. It was kind of weird, but I thought the makeup job was exceptional on that. I do think it's a full circle thing for Picard to open this episode dressing down Wesley and then ending the episode dressing down Wesley, essentially. It essentially is what we have come to know their relationship to be like. But Picard essentially says, I've always been proud of you. And so he's just essentially excusing all the times he's been difficult with Wesley by saying, this is just how I go and this is what I do, but I'm still proud of you for, who you are and how you've turned out. So I like that. It feels like they kind of came up with the idea of a space Uber or a space taxi driver with this character, Durgo, because he looks like he's doing space Uber right now. And I thought that was interesting because it does show a slice of life outside of the Federation, which is interesting for me to see people in a different kind of socioeconomic status or class when you see that. Because everybody doesn't live this great life that they have provided for you on these space stations or spaceships for the Federation. And some people are roughing it out like this Captain Durgo character, and life is not as pristine and amazing for him as it is for other people. So I thought that's a great just slice of life of other uh, in the world or in the universe. Also, you know, I like the moment where Deanna Troi kind of comes to Dr. Crusher. I felt like this is now the second or third time where she's tried to come to her and comfort her in a moment where she thought she would need a friend. And I thought those are good counselor instincts for her to come to Dr. Crusher, to Beverly, and kind of try to have this heart-to-heart moment, even though Beverly didn't really receive it that much. She was like, I don't want to put my head in that space right now. So thanks a lot, Deanna, but no thanks right now. But I did like the gesture of offering it, though. Yeah, I have to agree with some of the points that was also made by you, Jason, about the directing. Just to kind of highlight some of the things, I thought one of the shots I really enjoyed was when the shuttlecraft had crash landed and you saw Picard emerge from the top of it. And the angle that they took, it really looked cinematic. It looked like motion picture quality shot to me. The way it was lit, the angle, it just made me think, oh, this is it just made me see the directing. So Corey Allen's fingerprints are all over it, and I thought he did a great job of transitioning from the cave to the location to the shots that he took on the Enterprise for the B storyline. So yeah, all of those things said, I really liked the episode. I did feel sense of urgency. I felt the conflict there. I did like two storylines going on, were both believable. And also Patrick Stewart doing a hell of a good job of just doing an acting job without any motion, from just a still flat position. That's also pretty remarkable too. So yeah, I enjoyed this episode. It felt like a good science fiction episode.
Mm-hmm. I noticed a couple really good shots too. One was towards the beginning when there was Captain Picard talking to Wesley on the bridge, and he was kind of razzing him a little bit, pretending like he was, dressing him down. And then there was Riker kind of in the background in between them. And it was just like pretty simple shot, but sometimes when it's done perfectly, it looks really good, and I thought that was great. But yeah, I have to agree with all that. But that's all the time we have, everybody. Well, we are going to do things left unsaid after this, and we are going to go in. Oh man, I hope you don't miss that. Thank you to Chris McGee, Carrie Schwent, TJ Jackson-Bey, Faith Howell, Allyson Leach-Heid, Anil O. Polat. Always kind of looks like he's wearing Guinan's hat. Jason Okun, Melissa Longo, for myself, Cirroc, Melissa, and Aaron Eisenberg. Thank you all for hanging out with us. We'll see you real soon. Leave some comments below and keep the discussion going. We'll see you next time. And until then, always remember the seventh rule.